Hello and welcome to my June/July book review. I've been wanting to do one of these videos for a while, but in June and the first week of July we were actually on a road trip, which you could go check out those videos on my channel. But since we're on the road trip, I wasn't able to check out books, so I just thought I'd combine the 2 months. So I started at June, the end of this new series I found, and I really enjoyed the writing style. So I read the Ginger Bolton Deputy Donut series, which was really good. It's a good classic, like, murder mystery in a small town with a bake shop type thing. And there's like, I learned a lot about donuts actually, and how donuts are like made into different types of donuts. So it was really interesting. And it was a really good book. I love the writing style. It was easy to read and simple, which is something I haven't quite found in every book that I've tried. It was always like kept you guessing, and then it was a really good series. I read all 9 books in like 2 weeks. So I think the last book I finished in June, and that was the first book, and I think I gave it a 5 stars. So another author that I recently found that I've really been enjoying is Riley Sager. His books have always been on my want-to-read list, and I found this little section of his books at the library, and I just started reading them, and I really enjoy them. They're very suspenseful and like plot twisty and really interesting. So in June, I read Home Before Dark by Riley Sager, which was this really interesting mystery about like Okay, so this book actually read very much like Haunting of Hill House, at least the Netflix adaptation of it. It is from the perspective of one girl. She's an only child, and she's very much like Theo in Hill House, or the one with the gloves. And this one is dual perspective, and it goes back and forth between the girl, the main character, and her dad, who wrote a book about their time in this house. This book is fictional, of course, but it includes excerpts from the book about like these major events happening, and then it goes back to the future or the present, where the main character kind of is going through being back in the house after her father's death. And she's very cynical towards the book because maybe things aren't really as they seemed. She very much doesn't remember what happened, but she knows that the book isn't really what happened. But I've never read a book that was actually giving me like almost jump scares. Like while I was reading this book, it's so descriptive and so like easy to get lost in that it felt like I was just watching The Haunting of Hill House on TV, and I was like sitting in my chair like flipping the pages, can't wait to see what happens next. And honestly, as always, the end was a plot twist, and what seems supernatural may not be as supernatural, but it may be. So a lot of characters are kind of hiding things, and a lot of characters are not who they seem. So it was really interesting, and I think having the excerpts of the father's book in there was a neat touch, instead of like going back to the narrator's eyes when she was a kid. It kind of shows like fiction versus reality. What do you believe? What is truth? And just trying to figure that out along with the narrator. And I love his books because they're always like realistic, but they always have an air of kind of like supernatural, which is really interesting. So you can never really tell where it's going, and I did give this book 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I love the dual perspective. So the next book I read was by Matt Haig. I actually read The Midnight Library. It's right there. I loved it. It's one of my favorite books ever. So when I heard about his, I don't know if this is newer, I think it's a little older, How to Stop Time, I found it at the library and I checked it out, and it was really, really good. I gave this 5 stars as well. It was very interesting. It was kind of giving like dark academia and like world traveler, which is really interesting because I love books like that. And basically it just followed this guy who had this kind of disease where he was as close to eternal as we could get. Once he hit like 16, he just stopped aging, or he aged really, really slowly. So it kind of goes back and forth between like living with his wife, who was normal, and having his kid, and then like trying to find his kid again. And I really liked it. It was another one where it kind of bounced between perspectives and times. So I really liked it. I enjoyed it. So I did give it 5 stars. Next I did another Riley Sager, and this one was the only one left. So in this one, this young woman becomes a caretaker for this old woman in this house whose like whole family was murdered, and she's like my goal is to figure out what happened, and it kind of goes back and forth between the perspective of the young woman, who is the old woman, during the time and leading up to the events of her whole family's murder. And everyone thinks that this young woman did it, or the old woman. So the caretaker wants to figure out what happened, and then at the same time the caretaker has some stuff that went on in her life. So she's got this like dual motive thing going on, and it's really interesting. It's another Riley Sager classic, dual narrative, which I always love. And there's a huge plot twist. Like, if you read this whole book, you would have to read it again to like truly get it. It's very spooky and suspenseful, so I really liked it. I gave this one 5 stars also. So then I'm actually in a book club on Fable, and I read Assistant to the Villain. This is actually the second book right here, which I'm reading right now very slowly. But I read this with my book club on Fable, and it was very good. I give it 5 stars. Personally, knowing the backstory of this book, that it was written based off of like a TikTok creator kind of creating scenarios, and then she wrote a book about it. This was written by Hannah Nicole Meyer. Knowing the backstory and how it came to be makes me like it a little bit less, but I did enjoy it overall. It took me a while to read it. I listened to the audiobook and I would recommend it. I did like this book. It was pretty cheesy. It's like a romance, and obviously by the title, this girl becomes the assistant to the town villain, or like the kingdom villain. It was good. It was sweet. I don't know. I liked it. I liked reading it with my book club. That's probably helped my enjoyment with it. But I gave it 5 stars. And the last book I read in June before we went on our trip was another Riley Sager. I read The Last Time I Lied, which is really interesting. So again, a dual perspective. It was about this woman. She was grown up and she was asked to return to camp as a counselor, but like 15-20 years prior, the 3 other girls in her cabin disappeared in the middle of the night, and it comes out that she had more of a part in it than she initially revealed, and she was always like pointing fingers and like digging ditches that kind of helped ruin the relationships that she would have to foster 20 years in the future when she became a camp counselor again. So it kind of went back and forth between like leading up to the disappearances, and then as it turns out, she's staying in the same cabin that, this might be a spoiler, but she's staying in the same cabin that she was in this decades ago. That kind of plays into it. I won't spoil it too much, but it was very good and it has a good ending. I did give this one 4 stars because I think the ending was not really fitting with the rest of the story. I think it was kind of like underwhelming. Like, it was a real world, like it made sense. The ending made sense more than like anything else, but at the same time I felt like it was kind of like building up to this big suspenseful ending, and it just kind of fell flat. But I did like this story. I did like the ending overall, but I did give this book 4 stars because I didn't really like the ending as I was reading it. But and moving into July actually was a little bit less. I haven't really been reading because we got back from the road trip. I had to catch up on school, but now I actually have the books that I read. This is another Riley Sager. I've been wanting to read this for a long time. I read another book under a similar title, so I assumed I already read this one, but I didn't read this one yet. So I actually wanted to read this, but they didn't have it, and I found it in the large print section. I read Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This one actually felt really different to his other works. I felt like it reminded me of like The Paris Apartment, which is a book I didn't really enjoy, but I think that was more to do with the writing style and like the setting, because I really enjoyed this book. It was about this woman out of money, out of work, and she found a job as like an apartment sitter where they'd pay her to stay because of these rules they have in this historical apartment building. And I wanted to like spoil the ending because it was so good, but I want you guys to read this because this whole time you're like, what's going on? Like, she's trying to solve the mystery of the apartment sitter before her who disappeared, which may be a spoiler, but she's trying to figure out like what happened, and then these people are all going missing, and she's trying to figure out like what's going on, where are they going, and then there's like a history to the building that's kind of like brushed off as coincidence, but it's really good. I really love that it's kind of like, and it ties into this girl, her sister went missing as well, and so she's trying to figure that out, like what happened. there's no dual perspective here. This one is just a straightforward book, which is probably why it felt different than some of Sager's other books. It has this really good ending that kind of feels kind of sci-fi, which it's not at all, but it kind of feels like I just stepped in like a Twilight Zone episode. But throughout it, it's very interesting. It's got a lot of plot twists, some of which aren't really important to like the overall arching of the story, but are just kind of cool coincidences. But I really enjoyed this book. I think it was super suspenseful all throughout, and it had a bunch of interesting plot points that made me want to keep reading. I think I read this all in one day because I sat down at breakfast and I just wanted something to read while I was eating or drinking my tea or something, and I ended up just finishing this book in a couple hours. It was so good. I loved it, and I gave it 5 stars. And then the last book I read in July was The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. This book, if I could give it more than 5 stars, I would. This book was so good. I gave it a more formal review on, I believe, Fable or Goodreads. I think it was Fable. But this book was so good. It kind of reminded me of like a Goosebumps novel or like a Choose Your Own Adventure mixed with like Alice in Wonderland. If it was in real life. I loved the main character's like perspective and her motivations and her goals. So it's about this woman. She works as a assistant teacher in a school, and so there's this boy who is in the foster system, and as she was a close person at the time working in the school, they became really attached, and they both wanted the woman to adopt the boy. So they were trying to work on ways, but she didn't have much money and she didn't have a stable living situation, so she couldn't do it. And so that was one of her motivations, was to adopt this boy and to give him like everything he needed. And at the same time, this series that they really love, he was doing like a contest. The woman, I won't spoil it, but she has a chance to go to this like spooky amusement park style island where the writer lives with his assistant, and it kind of goes back and forth between like the assistant sometimes will give his perspective, but it's mostly focused on the main character, Lucy. And it's really good. It's kind of got some plot twists in it, or like it reveals information in a way that make you go like, what? So I really liked it. I did read this one in 1 or 2 days as well because I was so enthralled with it. It was just like, kind of captures the magic of nostalgia and like childhood dreams, and at being an adult, being able to foster those childhood dreams, especially when you miss out on childhood. So I really love this book, and I give it 5 stars, and it was just so amazing. And yeah, this was the last book I read this month. Yeah, that was my June-July book review / what I read. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any good book recommendations, leave them in the comments. Also, if you guys didn't know, I do a comment of the week down in the description, so be sure to always check out the description for interesting things. But the comment of this week is going to be, what is your favorite book series? So I will leave my favorite series in the description underneath the tagline that says comment of the week, because I need some time to think about it. But I'll let you guys comment yours down below. Also be sure to check out my description for links to my pages and things, as well as the landing page to donate to my fundraising to be a missionary to Japan. So if you want to learn more about that, feel free to leave a comment or message me, and I can totally like explain that. Or if you just feel compelled to give, that would be amazing. I would really appreciate that. So thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to subscribe and keep posted for my other videos coming out. Yeah, so I'm gonna go to the library now and get more books. But thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.